Historic mansions, plus luxury, residences of celebrities and billionaires around the world. There's a comfortable lie that almost everyone believes, that mansions are merely symbols of ostentation. But the truth, and it's unsettling, is that these houses say much more about fears, decisions, and vision for the future. It's not about money. But before continuing with this video, like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any information about the world of luxury. Some of the richest people on the planet live in absolute silence, while others build palaces to hide empty spaces that no one sees. And that's where the game changes. Perhaps you've wondered why certain houses seem alive, full of presence, while others, even luxurious ones, convey a strange heaviness. It's no coincidence. Historic mansions carry choices, mistakes, ambitions, and strategies that shaped entire destinies. By observing where billionaires and celebrities choose to live, or simply store their wealth, we begin to see invisible patterns that never appear in superficial content. The most curious thing is that these stories aren't just about them. They're about us, about the desire to leave a legacy, to protect what is valuable, and to build something that survives the test of time. And when you understand what's really behind these residences, you begin to see luxury, success, and wealth in a completely different way. Get ready, because some of these revelations will change the way you even look at your own home. The human fascination with historic mansions. Why these houses mesmerize us. There's something almost magnetic about historic mansions, as if those ancient walls whisper stories that time has tried to hide. It's not just about size, luxury, or price. It's about what was lived inside. Decisions that changed destinies, unlikely loves, silent falls, and improbable ascensions. The human mind is curious by nature, and when it sees a house that has spanned centuries, it automatically tries to imagine who passed through those corridors. It's as if every detail is an invitation to enter a world that few have had access to. Interestingly, these houses fascinate us because they represent something that many people seek without being able to explain it. Permanence. In a fast-paced, disposable, and noisy world, a historic mansion symbolizes stability, legacy, and quiet power. It's no wonder that so many people spend hours watching videos, reading books, or researching these residences. It functions as an emotional mirror. By observing these houses, a person reflects on their own desire to leave something that lasts longer than just one phase of life. There's also a little discussed psychological factor. Historic mansions blend dream and reality. They seem unattainable, but they are real, tangible. They are there. This activates the imagination and creates identification, even from a distance. A good exercise is to notice which details attract the most attention. The architecture, the garden, the location, the silence. These elements reveal a lot about what the person deeply values. And it is precisely this invisible pattern that begins to repeat itself when we observe those who lived, and still live, inside these houses. Audrey Hepburn's mansion in Rome. Quiet elegance and secrets of a star. When it comes to historic luxury, few stories are as discreet and profound as that of the residence of Audrey Hepburn. The vicinity of Rome. Unlike the noisy glamour of Hollywood, that house reflected silence, simplicity, and an almost invisible sophistication. Audrey didn't choose Rome for status, but for refuge. Among ancient gardens and walls that had witnessed centuries pass, she found something rare: peace. And that says a lot about how true luxury sometimes doesn't need to be advertised. The curious thing is that this mansion wasn't excessive or extravagant. It was proportional, harmonious, almost humble by the standards of a global star. This breaks a common belief that extremely successful people always seek excess. Audrey proved the opposite. She understood that the environment shapes the emotional state. A well-chosen house doesn't impress visitors. It sustains those who live there. And this is a concept that anyone can apply, even in small spaces. Less noise, more intention. There's a practical lesson hidden in this choice. Audrey used to value natural light, silence, and connection with nature. Elements that regulate emotions and clarify decisions. Anyone can adapt this, rearrange the house to receive more light, reduce visual stimuli, create a relaxation corner. The luxury that transforms is not in the price of the property, but in the feeling it sustains daily. And when we observe other historic mansions of billionaires, this pattern begins to repeat itself in surprising ways. Villa Leopolda, the house that billionaires have been fighting over for decades. Located on the French Riviera, the Villa Leopolda, it's not just a mansion. It's almost a silent symbol of power and rivalry. Built in the early 20th century, it has belonged to kings, bankers, and some of the most influential figures on the planet. What few people realize is that the value of this house lies not only in its impeccable gardens or cinematic views of the Mediterranean, but in what it represents: absolute scarcity. There are no others like it. And the human brain deeply values that which cannot be replicated. Billionaires are vying for Villa Leopolda not to live there, but to mark symbolic territory. It's as if ownership says, without words, "I've reached a level where money buys history." This type of property doesn't fit into a common investment logic. It doesn't need to generate income, nor be functional in daily life. It functions as an emotional and strategic asset, something that protects wealth, reputation, and legacy simultaneously. It's a silent game, played by those who think decades ahead. There's a powerful analogy here that applies to anyone. Just as these billionaires choose unique assets, those who want to evolve need to seek decisions that aren't obvious. This could mean learning a rare skill, investing in in-depth knowledge, or building a solid reputation instead of seeking quick shortcuts. Villa Leopolda teaches us that true value lies in what few have the courage to wait for, maintain, and protect. And when we observe other famous mansions, we realize that not all of them carry this elegant silence. Some, on the contrary, carry excesses, emotional scars, and far more turbulent histories. Michael Jackson's former mansion: luxury, eccentricity, and lasting memories. The former residence of Michael Jackson, known as Neverland Ranch, has always sparked fascination and controversy. At first glance, it was the epitome of eccentric luxury: amusement park, private zoo, cinemas, and endless gardens. But behind this spectacle lay something deeper: a clear attempt to reconstruct a childhood that never happened. The house in this case was not just a dwelling. It was an emotional setting, almost a psychological refuge created to fill old voids. What's interesting is to realize how excess often stems not from abundance, but from lack. Michael had access to everything, but sought emotional security. The mansion became his own isolated world, where external rules seemed non-existent. This reveals a point that is rarely discussed. Luxury without balance can become a prison. When the space ceases to serve the person and begins to protect them from the world, something starts to go off-kilter, even if everything seems perfect on the outside. There's a practical reflection here that's worth its weight in gold. Environments amplify who a person already is. An organized home enhances clarity. A chaotic home enhances confusion. Therefore, before desiring more space, more possessions, or more status, it's wise to organize what you already have, emotionally and physically. Small actions, such as simplifying routines or creating healthy boundaries, prevent luxury from becoming a burden. And looking at other celebrity mansions, it's clear that some have learned this lesson, while others have silently repeated the same pattern. Jeff Bezos's secret residence: power, strategy, and the architecture of influence. Most people imagine mansions as showcases of ostentation, but the residence of Jeff Bezos breaks that script. Their homes, especially in Washington, D.C. and Beverly Hills, they are strategic, discreet, and almost silent. No visual excesses. The luxury there lies in the positioning, location, security, privacy, and access to decision-making centers. It's the type of property that doesn't attract attention, but changes the game for whoever occupies it. This pattern reveals a subtle principle. The greater the power, the less need there is to prove anything. Bezos understands that the house is an extension of his personal strategy. Spacious areas for thinking, spaces designed for long conversations and difficult decisions, and an architecture that protects time, the most valuable asset of all. It's a functional luxury that serves mental clarity and quiet influence. An outside observer might find it simple, but simplicity at this level is a calculated choice. There's a practical lesson here that anyone can apply. Creating environments that foster focus, whether it's an organized office, protected schedules, or clear routines, multiplies results. Reading in depth, for example, books like Think and Grow Rich of Napoleon Hill Principles, Ray Dalio's book, help structure long-term decisions. Homes, like habits, reveal the kind of future someone is building. And when we look at Hollywood, we realize that not every mansion follows this strategic logic. Some, in fact, carry a weight that no one wants to assume. The loneliest house in Hollywood. The mansion nobody wants, but everyone talks about. Amidst the hills of Los Angeles, there's a mansion that once belonged to stars, producers, and tycoons, but today it carries an unsettling silence. It's not a lack of luxury nor of location. It's reputation. Unresolved issues, bad decisions, and heavy memories have transformed that address into a place everyone knows, but nobody wants to live in. In the world of high-end real estate, this is more common than it seems. Properties that become a topic of conversation, but lose their soul. The less obvious point is that houses absorb narratives. Just as work environments carry an emotional atmosphere, mansions also accumulate symbolic energy. Scandals, bankruptcies, family conflicts. Hollywood teaches us that not all luxury is desirable when it comes with emotional noise. Successful people avoid places that drain focus and clarity, even if they cost less than they should. After all, the visible price is never the real cost. There's a direct application to everyday life. Before accepting an opportunity that seems too good to be true, it's worth asking, does this bring peace or just status? Sometimes changing jobs, moving house, or reorganizing relationships is like renovating an old property. You decide what stays and what needs to go. Small symbolic cleanups, like closing cycles and redefining boundaries, restore value. And when we look at mansions that celebrities have chosen to rebuild from scratch, it's clear that some prefer to rewrite their own history, even if it costs time and money. Beyoncé and Jay-Z's palace, when luxury becomes a cultural symbol. When Beyoncé and Jay-Z they acquired their monumental residences between Bel Air and Malibu, they didn't just buy real estate, they consolidated a cultural manifesto. The architecture is modern, almost sculptural, made to be seen and felt. Each space communicates creative power, identity, and its own narrative. It's not empty ostentation, it's a statement. The house becomes a stage where the couple's story continues to be written, away from the spotlight, but with clear intention. What's interesting is to see how luxury serves expression there. Internal studios, living areas designed for family, open views that invite contemplation. Everything dialogues with creative freedom and control over one's own time. This type of residence doesn't try to please everyone. It affirms values. It's a subtle reminder that true status is born when someone builds something that reflects who they are, not what others expect them to be. Luxury, in this context, is coherence between personal life and work. In practice, anyone can learn from this model. Creating a personal palace doesn't require millions. It can be an environment that fosters creativity, a routine that protects energy, or an original project that bears your signature. Reading creative biographies, organizing a production space, and defining clear boundaries with the outside world are simple and powerful steps. When the environment reinforces identity, decisions become easier. And when observing other historic mansions, it becomes clear that not all seek to express culture. Some prefer to hide behind ancient walls, guarding secrets that we will explore later. The historic Brazilian mansion that became a global object of desire, hidden among the woods and the natural curves of the terrain. In Rio de Janeiro, a canoe house proof that luxury doesn't need to shout to be heard. Designed by Oscar Niemeyer, she became a global icon precisely because she defied the obvious. She doesn't impose architecture on nature, but engages in a dialogue with it. This house doesn't dominate the space. It respects it. And perhaps that's exactly why architects, collectors, and billionaires from all over the world have come to desire her. The global fascination stems from a simple and rare concept: authentic identity. Casa das Canoas doesn't try to copy European palaces or American mansions. It's Brazilian to the core, with free curves, total integration with the environment, and an almost poetic elegance. This type of property teaches that real value comes from originality. When something carries soul, history, and intention, it transcends borders and becomes a benchmark. In the luxury market, what is unique always wins over what is merely expensive. There's a direct and powerful application here. Instead of trying to replicate ready-made models, successful people build something that reflects who they are. It could be an original professional project, a well-defined personal brand, or even a lifestyle consistent with their own values. Investing time in discovering what is genuine and eliminating excesses that only imitate others creates natural differentiation. And when we observe billionaires buying houses like this without ever living in them, we realize that there's an even quieter game happening behind these acquisitions. Why billionaires buy homes they never use? The invisible game behind wealth. At first glance, it seems like a waste. Million-dollar mansions closed up, lights off, impeccable gardens, without residents. But for many billionaires, these houses were never meant to be lived in. They were meant to be used, to exist. They function like silent vaults, protecting value over time, away from market volatility. A historic, well-located, and rare property is not just a home. It's a strategic asset, almost like a work of art that can be appreciated from a distance. The less obvious point is that these houses buy something even more valuable than space: optionality. Owning property in different countries guarantees mobility, legal security, and flexibility in unpredictable scenarios. In times of crisis, political change, or economic instability, these properties become safe havens. It's not about showing off, but about anticipation. Those who think big rarely react. They position themselves beforehand. There is a direct parallel with everyday life. Financially savvy people also build invisible assets: in-depth knowledge, solid networks, and a trustworthy reputation. Reading. Books like The Intelligent Investor Following Benjamin Graham's Principles, or delving deeper into financial education, creates the same protective effect. Not everything needs to be used now to be valuable. And when we observe the pattern of these choices, a disturbing question arises. What differentiates those who accumulate wealth from those who merely consume luxury? What do these mansions reveal about the values, fears, and ambitions of the ultra-rich? When observing these mansions as a whole, old, modern, silent, or extravagant, a pattern begins to emerge. Houses are emotional portraits. Some reveal a search for control, others for peace. Some scream identity, others hide behind high walls. The property becomes a language. It communicates values without words, fears without confession, and ambitions without announcement. It is no coincidence that those who value focus choose silence, and those who seek validation build grandiose settings. The little discussed detail is that wealth amplifies inner traits. If there is clarity, the house is organized. If there is conflict, the house becomes dispersed. That's why historic mansions are not just beautiful. They are honest. They tell what the owner wanted to preserve and what they tried to compensate for. This perspective changes everything. Instead of envying the size, it's worth observing the intention. Architecture becomes applied psychology, and luxury becomes a tool, not an end. There's a practical lesson that applies to any reality. Before desiring more space, more status, or more possessions, it's worth aligning your purpose, organizing your routine, defining priorities, choosing in-depth reading, biographies, finance, practical philosophy, and designing environments that support better decisions are already starting to live strategically. Homes, like habits, build destinies. And when this awareness takes hold, the inevitable question arises, not about where to live, but about where to live. Who a person is becoming who they are while building their own wealth. What do these mansions teach us about the invisible game of life? After touring these historic mansions and billionaire residences, it becomes clear that luxury has never been just about money. It's about decision, intention, and long-term vision. Each house you've seen here reveals choices made in silence, years before any results appear. And the question that remains isn't, how much does it cost, but what does it sustain? Peace? Power? Identity? Protection? Legacy? Now, let's apply this to your own reality. What kind of environment are you building for your life today? Does your routine favor clarity or distraction? Do your choices build stability or just appearances? Just like these mansions, habits also accumulate history. Small daily decisions, what you study, who you spend time with, where you invest your time, shape the invisible wealth that defines your future. So reflect. If someone were observing your life from the outside, what would they say about you? What values would be reflected in your choices? If this content made you think differently, it was already worthwhile. Now tell me in the comments, which of these mansions impressed you the most, and why? And if you want to continue learning about wealth, strategy, luxury, and the behind-the-scenes aspects that nobody shows, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, knowledge is not superficial, it transforms.